Welcome to the Microsoft Teams news show brought to you by UC Today. I'm your host, Rob Scott, and it's great to have you all tuning in. Today, as always, I'm joined by the man with the knowledge, Tom Arbuthnot from Empowering Cloud. Tom, how's it going?
Yeah, really good, thanks. Yeah, we're just a few weeks away from Microsoft Ignite now, so really excited about that. But surprisingly, there's still been some quite big news drops over the last month. So even though it's pre-Ignite, we've got quite a lot to talk about, which is good.
Indeed. Well, it's great to have you on the show again today. We've got a lot to cover, and our esteemed panel of experts are standing by. So let's dive in. I mean, first of all, we said we'd talk about this big announcement, probably one of the biggest announcements from Microsoft Teams for quite a while, if maybe even ever. Tom, tell us more.
Yeah, arguably the biggest change ever to Teams. So forever, we've had this concept in Teams of a chat tab or a chat button where we have kind of group chats, and then a Teams button where we have our teams, and our teams comprise of channels, and we chat in the channels, and we have files and apps. And those have been always presented as two separate scenarios. So you have ad hoc chats in group chat, and you do your projects in Teams. Microsoft are essentially changing that. They're looking to drive more adoption of channels and collaboration. So they're kind of collapsing the hierarchy visually so that both chats, group chats, and teams and channels will live under a single chat icon. And you will see both of them in there, and they'll be filterable and kind of in the same visual space. Now, this is huge because it moves buttons, and Teams is an enterprise product, and enterprises go crazy whenever you move buttons around. So that's definitely a big thing. But also it's just a change in how people think about chat versus channels. I've been fortunate to be using it for a while. I think some of the panel are as well. For me, it's been really positive because I find myself, particularly on mobile, going to my channels a lot more readily because they're in the same spot as my ad hoc chats. But yeah, there's been a lot of debate on LinkedIn about, how impactful this change will be. I think interestingly, if you're one of the very few organizations that has done a ton of adoption work on Teams, and you've set the habit of you do your teamwork in the Teams and you do your ad hoc chat in the chat, it kind of impacts your adoption story because it's changing how people work. The reality is most organizations I work with haven't landed that story, and group chats are used way more commonly. So I think for most organizations, it'll be a positive because they'll start to bring group chat and channel collab into the same experience. But I don't know if any of our panel have got thoughts on the change as well.
I think that in some ways it'll be helpful, right? And one of the superficial ways is the whole nomenclature issue that we always have of, you need to go to the teams within Teams, and you get into your Teams cycle and get lost in all that. So it kind of helps. Go into the chat tab within Teams. That sounds a little more natural, a little more easy to find things. But again, I think if you have been an organization that has invested a lot into adoption and to understanding the way that you use Teams, then perhaps there's going to be a little bit of confusion there, right? I get the overall concept of what it's trying to achieve, and it may very well be successful in that regard. But in the interim, I think it'll be, for those that are very familiar with it, it may be a little bit of an uphill battle. But that's kind of the same with any new feature, any new tool, any new rollout or change to a platform. There's going to be an uphill battle when it comes to making it be commonplace usage versus what you're told just changed. So
yeah, it's a fun challenge for Microsoft. When you're into the hundreds of millions of users, anything you change creates a reaction. Yeah. I mean, this is a big change. It deserves a conversation, but literally you move buttons, that's affecting millions of users one way or the other.
Yeah.
And when is this going to happen, Tom?
So there's no firm date for a hard switch over, but Microsoft are starting to roll in a soft option in preview. So for the minute, it will only affect users if they're proactively in preview. And even then, they'll get a kind of pop-up saying, we've got a new experience. Do you want to try it? So it's a very gently, and Microsoft are going to look at the feedback, but it will definitely be well into 25 before they kind of push over. And interestingly, for the admins listening to the podcast, there's no admin control over this at the moment. So it will essentially, right now it's preview, so it doesn't really affect your end users in production, but it feels like that the Microsoft are pushing a road of, we want to present this option to the end users, not have you turn it off.
Interesting.
Yeah, and Tom, I think there's a really good Meet the Makers episode that was hosted by Karuna Gatnu who Rob, you and I had as a guest on our AI show. And I think in that video, they said that at Ignite, they're going to make it available to everybody in preview, right? So I'd expect that that's something coming, out of Ignite.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, it was tasked as November, so that'll be the right.
It seems,
about the right time.
yeah.
Definitely,
And I guess I would just weigh in and say, at some point, like I think you wrote a quite clickbaity thing. You said teams without teams. I think you posted a message on that. But obviously, they're not getting rid of teams for anybody. But it seems really fast, and they're giving you the option so you can keep things as they are. Because I often worry with these changes, which is quite a few changes, and I like it. You can filter by unread, and you can look at the mentions, across the channels and your chat messages. I just worry that, the people that don't spend all their time clicking on all the new Teams buttons, are they going to get as much out of these potential productivity improvements as they should, right? So, when is too much change a negative as opposed to a positive? And I think, Josh, that's what you were kind of alluding to.
Yeah, I think the one thing that's interesting that enterprises can challenge on along your lines, Kevin, is if we've already invested in this approach, you're kind of nudging our users in a different direction without us controlling that. Like great, you want to change the product, but it's this constant tension with, say, having that many users and trying to drive product forward. If you ship everything off by default, none of the admins realistically turn it on and nothing ever changes. So I'm kind of on the side of Microsoft pushing things and creating a bit of noise to push the product forward.
Great stuff. Well, no more waiting in line. The Microsoft Teams Queues app has gone GA, Tom. Tell us more.
Yeah, this is quite a nice addition to Microsoft Teams. So essentially you can think of this as a visual overlay to how Microsoft handles call queues and auto attendance. So sort of contact center light type scenario, with the concept of supervisors and agents and bringing them in and out of queues and seeing what's going on, some analytics. This has now gone GA as part of Teams Premium. So the people taking the supervisor or agent role will need that premium seat license. And we've got a really good briefing over on Empowering Cloud, where we've gone through all the features and capabilities. And yeah, I think the response will be really interesting. Right now, there's no kind of brand new features or capabilities. It really is just Queues. Queues app is a kind of front-end UI to call queues and auto attendance, but there are some roadmap features for things like Barge and Whisper and additional capabilities. So definitely one to watch.
And we've got an update on survivable branch appliances, I believe, Tom. Just
easy for you to say, Rob. Yeah, this is a really big one for the hardcore voice people. So, survivable branch appliance, to level set, is a box that you can sit on a physical site, so in an office, and in the event the internet goes down, telephony can continue. So some customers have this requirement that if internet goes, from a disaster recovery point of view, the phones have to keep working. And we've had that in Skype Business forever. In Teams, it was a bit challenging because without going too technical, users and devices have an authentication token that can last up to 24 hours. So the survivability of the end user, be it their desktop or their phone, depended on when that token was renewed. And it was up to 24 hours, but it could be as little as 4. So as a survivability story, fine if it's an internet blip for half an hour, but not if your site is down for a day, potentially, or days. Microsoft have changed how that works now. So the SBA will take tokens even after they've expired for up to 7 days, which means we can go multiple days without internet and the phones and the desktop soft phones will continue to work. So a really significant improvement to the Teams phone resiliency story.
Good stuff. Right. Well, I'm going to go to Graham for the next one. We've got a Microsoft Teams Rooms update on digital signage. Graham, do you want to take us through the update?
So Microsoft were testing digital signage for quite a while, and they were testing with 2 providers. One mainstream, Appspace, which is a well-known productivity tool, not just for digital signage, but room booking, wayfinding, and again, they have evolved a lot out of COVID to help people find where their office is. But again, what a lot of people wanted was digital signage in the meeting space while the systems were idle. So, provide company logos, graphics, what's on the menu for today, etc., whatever it might be. So Microsoft have now certified and gone GA with Appspace and XOGO, XOGO. And again, they have a free tier plan you can test out, have a play with. So this is only for Microsoft Teams rooms on Windows. So Android is due to come probably at some point next year. So just when the device is idle, you can set your timeout. It's actually used with the Pro Portal as well. So you must have a Pro license to be able to get to this. And then you can assign a room, and you can have multiple providers. So let's say Europe uses or America uses XOGO, Europe uses Appspace. You can actually have multiple providers and assign those to different rooms. So a big ask from customers. And I think, again, this is sort of one of these features that has been customer driven to Microsoft to say, hey, we must have digital signage. We don't want to put in other signage players. The device is on the network. Why can't we show something? So Microsoft worked on this, and you still get your overlay at the top to show your next meeting is upcoming at 10 a.m., etc. So you don't lose your full calendar, so you can peek in the room, is it free, and see what's upcoming, etc. So great feature, and now GA.
Yeah, one thing I was going to add is there's also a direct URL feature if you don't use Appspace or XOGO, although it doesn't support authentication at this moment.
I think more important than the features, I like that use case you pointed out, Graham, where you're sharing the menu of the day. That would be the most important thing to me if I were.
That's what's getting you back into the office, Josh, is the lunch menu. It's fair enough.
Good stuff. Well, moving on from Teams a little bit, do we want to talk about Microsoft Places? There's a bit of a roadmap update, Tom. Some bits and bobs coming through relating to all these kind of hybrid work challenges we're all having, but Microsoft Places is in the center. Tell us more.
Yeah, so we talked last month on the show about Microsoft Places looking like it's lining up to GA in November. And we've suddenly, in the last few days, had a flood of Places features hit the roadmap. So more details of how it might work and what the features are. So just as a reminder, Places, Microsoft kind of define it as a AI-powered flexible work, hybrid work app. And it's around kind of maximizing when you're in the office, how you make the most of it, getting people together, desk booking, finding out who's around you in the space. And some of the things that hit the roadmap are team guidance. So this is where managers can proactively communicate to their team which days that the team should be in the office and what their priorities should be. Individual desk booking. So as it sounds, booking desks or booking hot desks. Intelligent suggestions in calendar. So calendar starting to try and prompt people to proactively book. You're in the office, Jack's in the office, you've got a meeting at 3, why don't you book a room, that kind of thing. And then some workplace presence features where it's trying to deduce where you are based on the device you're connected to and putting your presence as available in the calendar, in Teams, etc. And all of that kind of wrapped up with analytics on the back end for the manager or the facilities manager or the workplace manager to understand who's doing what. Still quite vague in terms of roadmap items. I expect we'll see some more in Ignite. Ryan, I know you've been diving into it and kind of got a feel for what sits where in terms of, because there's a free license and a premium license as well.
Yes. So the free or core side looks like this is going to be really more around the base scheduling. You're going to be able to put in a work plan, and you can indicate in your RSVPs if you're going to be in the office or not in the office, and you'll be able to share workspace presence to kind of where you're working on a given day. But the rest of it, and I would say a lot of the functionality that we're really excited about beyond that in Places is going to be part of a premium license, and in some cases a premium license and a Copilot license. And so the premium side, there's an enhanced kind of booking feature, an enhanced finder to find meeting spaces. That's going to be part of the feature set that requires premium. Desk booking, the ability to auto release desks and rooms, the analytics side that you referred to, Tom. All of that is going to require premium. And then some of the guidance and management of rooms with Copilot, the features that specifically leverage Copilot require the user to have a Copilot license as well.
And just to be clear, that's interestingly part of Teams Premium. So it's not a new Places Premium license. Correct. It stacks into that Teams Premium license, which we talked about, the Qs app earlier. We talked about various other premium features. They're all stacking into this Teams Premium SKU.
Yeah, which adds another, because there's pieces of Teams Premium that are fairly niche for a particular kind of target audience. And then there's others that are fairly universal. This certainly adds another universal element to kind of value of that premium license.
Yeah, I think this is one of Microsoft's best shots for you should license premium site-wide. Like branding's another interesting one that's taken me by surprise. Some organizations are so invested in branding, being able to brand lobbies, do the advanced backgrounds. That has been a surprising driver for me. But I think you're right, Ryan. This is one of those ones where honestly, if you're going to take full advantage of places, you probably want most people to have those capabilities, and therefore you're blanketing premium.
I'm curious. I'm not usually one to have a strong opinion on things. I'm usually pretty sit back and not be very opinionated. But when it places, I don't know what my opinion is going to be about its success there. There's so many factors into the current scene of back to work mandates, then the features of kind of doing the proactive tracking of people, where they're at, are they available or not available. I think there's been a lot of backlash in the public about being tracked and knowing where you're at all the time by your workplace, right? So I'm curious to see what the adoption ends up being with the tool in general. At the same time, there's so many moving parts to it, but a tool like that to have really good adoption is going to have to be non-cumbersome, right? Because it's not supposed to be the bulk of what you're doing. It's just supposed to help you streamline getting where you need to go to get to work and get moving. So I think if it can be an execution where it is a light approach, a light feeling to those using it on the end user side, it could do some really amazing things. On the flip side of it, if it feels like there's just so many moving parts and pieces to it, it's a lot to learn. I'm gonna back away from it. It could have a harder time with adoption. So I think that's a really good point. I don't know what the thought process is there on whether or not it's going to be a big success or not, but certainly the environment is stacking up to where it could be.
In principle, Microsoft have the benefit here of they own Outlook and they own Teams. So to your point, Josh, in theory, this should slip into the way we work if you're a Microsoft shop relatively easily. Like it's the Outlook calendar and it's Teams. So in that sense, it feels like theirs for the winning. But as we all know, different product teams, different priorities. It'll be interesting to see. I think you're entirely right, Josh. If I have to go to places to do a thing, am I going to take that extra step?
But also, I was going to add to that, this has been a long time coming places. People may have already chosen a platform like
Appspace 2 years,
and
Graham.
else.
Don't know what you're on about.
I know, it's nothing in this day and age of modern technology and agile working. Some people have had to find a platform already. To find this, back to work, return to work, sort of, how do I find my desks? How do I find my people? Microsoft could struggle in trying to uplift it to a premium license.
Well, and I think I just got back from WebEx1, and Cisco has had Cisco Spaces for a long time. So I hope that the Microsoft product team goes and looks at that actually GA offer that does a lot of good things. Because what I worry about, to your point, Josh, is Microsoft provides 10 options when one option will do. And so the team's premium licensing, like, Ryan, that you spoke to, it's like, what if I don't buy it for everybody? Do I have two different classes of users and now their booking experience or hybrid experience? I've got to know if you've got a premium license or not. This is what worries me, about all these different licensing combinations. What do I get if I got Teams Premium versus Copilot, if I've got both, or one versus the other? I think, Microsoft will get this right, but they will make it as confusing as possible before they do. And maybe eventually it'll be called Copilot places, because like let's put Copilot in front of it.
Interesting. Well, let's see what happens at Microsoft Ignite. We might get some announcements on this, but yeah, it feels like there's something brewing there. We've got to consolidate some of these applications at some point, but it's great to see lots happening on the places front as well. Let's go over to our kind of Microsoft, I suppose, Copilot segment now. And first of all, I think we should all join in a big.
Do we need a theme tune for the Copilot segment? I feel like we
happy birthday. I mean, is it appropriate? Copilot is one in AI years. That's probably like a teenager, Tom, I would say. What do you think?
I was wondering when Microsoft were going to count this, because they say Copilot is one. I mean, this is reflecting the anniversary, the first anniversary of the general availability of what was Copilot for M365, now M365 Copilot, to enterprises. So if you remember back, this was you can now buy 300 seats minimum out of GA. But yeah, nevertheless, we are a year into Copilot, and I think we're going to talk about some of the Microsoft numbers from the earnings call. But Microsoft are, flexing some kind of big account examples of high seat usage. I think Kevin and I have a bit of a debate to talk about, how much the adoption has been in a year and how hard Microsoft are pushing it. But definitely a lot has changed in a year. Even the branding went from Copilot for M365 to M365 Copilot. There's been a lot of talk recently of agents and agentic, which again is a very different philosophy to where we were a year ago.
Yeah. And certainly Copilot in Excel is GA. They introduced Pages because we need another application to confuse people. Copilot in OneDrive is now available. They've introduced a Copilot dashboard, right? And Copilot Academy. So, they're certainly working hard to drive. I think they're getting initial adoption, but I think sustained adoption. You got to pony up for a whole year of the Copilot license, right? And I think the worry is, after a couple of months, do people incorporate it into their day-to-day workflow, or do they try it a little bit and then, kind of the usage falls off? And so certainly Microsoft is putting out lots of adoption and usage materials, great stuff in this Copilot Academy, this Copilot dashboard. If anybody looks at all the analytics that are available, is fantastic. But I do think, there is going to be a challenge of just keeping people paying for these licenses.
This is kind of reminiscent of for me of Teams' 1 year anniversary. I remember that being at Enterprise Connect very well. And a lot of the same themes were present, right? When it came to adoption, when it came to actual use cases, the uphill battle there, the notion of this replacing Skype for Business. And those were all still things that were bubbling up. I think the difference that we've got here is that, unlike with some other launches or we would just talk about places, AI is going nowhere, and that's a very big. Everyone realizes that, right? Whether it's ChatGPT, whatever your preferred tool is, the longer we go on getting accustomed to having some sort of tool helping us in various tasks like this, whether it's in the Microsoft ecosystem or not, that just becomes a regular way that we do everything we do. As we get closer to that point, and as we get closer to a point of corporate governance where they start to say, hey, we're going to start to put some reins on the way that we approach different AI tools within our business, because turns out that's a big security vulnerability. That's a risk. Third-party outside tools, right? As those start to come into focus and take shape more, I think those things are going to aid Copilot in solidifying itself within the Microsoft ecosystem, because Microsoft is entrenched, right? It's already there in so many different ways. So that is the benefit for it. But it's reminiscent, because we're at that point where there is an uphill adoption battle. So many people are still confused to the point of, well, which Copilot are we talking about that's 1 year old? I did a video on what is Microsoft Copilot, and it's been interesting to see the review, the comments that come back on that video on YouTube. It by far and large hasn't been positive commentary yet, not because of the video itself, but because of the subject of the video.
I mean, sure. What helps you sleep at night, Josh? I'm sure
that's what I tell myself. That's what I tell myself. But it's been eye-opening to me, because I'm like, wow, there's a lot of work to be done on the ground still with this. It's not going anywhere, but it's not like it's being ushered in with arms wide open across the board. So
no, I think we're still very much in the early adopter phase, and Microsoft want to drive this fast, right? They're investing literal billions a quarter in AI and data center, and GitHub Copilot has been very successful with developers. That's a good use case for where Microsoft are now. They're making more revenue out of the GitHub Copilot than they were out of GitHub full stop when they bought it. That's a use case everybody seems to understand, techie, forward-leaning. For your typical users, I think to your point, Josh, it's not going anywhere. It will happen, but what's the timeline? And also the challenges, the criticisms are interesting as well, because at the moment, I think it leans to the hardcore people who are actually jumping into Gemini and ChatGPT and other tools, and kind of comparing and use cases and looking on the edge. And then probably your more typical user is not yet actually mainstream regular user. Are they thinking about how they can go and find another tool to do their job? No, they're just heads down trying to do their job. So I think the adoption curve is less hockey stick than Microsoft would like it to be, but I think the outlook is bullish in the long term.
Well, did Microsoft say 87% of users reported increased productivity?
Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of big numbers. I mean, the 60% of the Fortune 500 are using Copilot to do some kind of meeting related tasks. 70% of the Fortune 500 are using Copilot. But again, is that all M365 Copilot, or is that Microsoft Copilot, which is included at all SKU levels? Is interesting. There are some big. I had a panel with EY recently who have given it to everybody. Vodafone have got 68,000 seats. UBS have got 50,000 seats. So there are some examples of customers really rolling out at scale. But with those rollouts, there is a lot of training and adoption. If you look at the types of companies that are adopting it, they're often more tech or tech leaning, where they'll have a population of users. Obviously, once you get to tens of thousands of users, you have all sorts of users in your org. But net, if you're someone like EY or KPMG, you have a lot of consultants, a lot of technical people who could drive usage potentially.
Gotta love those marketing numbers, though. Those are fun.
We're going to get more of those at Ignite, Josh. I think we're going to get lots of new facts and stats at Ignite. But the world is saving hours, right? I mean, that's we're not seeing a lot of layoffs due to AI just yet. So, at least we are being more productive at work. And I think the more hours we save, the better for me. But it is those use cases. And Kevin and I were talking about this on the AI show. It's so much opportunity, but there was equally a lot of rocks to move and a lot of challenges out there right now with adoption.
It's still just moving incredibly fast, like the change in the capabilities. And I think we're going to get onto the Microsoft earnings call, but Satya, talked about this as it's Microsoft's 50th anniversary, and Microsoft kind of committing to reinventing itself in the age of AI. And he made the case that, Moore's law, chip capacity or chip, capability doubled every 2 years and the cost halved. Currently, AI performance is doubling roughly every 6 months. And we're still on the edge of some really interesting model changes, and it's really competitive. So, I still think we're net in the early days.
Lots to talk about. But let's talk about another Copilot announcement around autonomous agents, Tom.
Yeah, this is interesting. So whether you think this is a reaction to Salesforce and Benioff or not, Salesforce definitely came out very strong, saying that the future of AI is not assistance for humans. It's not ChatGPT. It's not Copilot. It's actually building agents to do stuff in place of people. And a real, I quite enjoy it from a technical kind of onlooker point of view, a real aggressive, like the model's not Copilot, the model is agents. Like replace your contact centers with agents, replace your chat with agents. And when they say agents, they mean, AI doing the task for them. And Microsoft, either in parallel to that or as a reaction to that, I love Kevin's thoughts on this, I know he's following quite closely, have come out much more aggressively talking about agent-based scenarios and agentic scenarios and using Copilot Studio to build a line of business. I feel like that was always part of the story, but Microsoft were heavily layering on the people-first story, and now it feels a little bit more balanced towards, we like assisting people, but we could also build these proactive, the AI can do it for you use cases.
Yeah, I mean, I think you bring up a great point, Tom. Salesforce with Agentforce came out, and I certainly heard from certain people that the Microsoft execs, felt they needed to react to that. And, a lot of the Agentforce announcements, overhung the market, and that a lot of them were, coming. It seems like the middle of 2025 is going to be a fantastic time because everything's becoming available. And so, this whole Copilot Wave 2, it all of a sudden started talking about all these agents, which, to your point, it's funny because the Copilot, you were always the pilot, and you had this Copilot as always, human in the loop. And now it's like, no, human in the loop is slowing things down. These agents are just going to do things. We've heard that story for a long time in the contact center, with respect to virtual agents. And what I would say about these autonomous agents, it's very early days, and I think a lot of announcements. This is a lot of aspirational stuff. Eric from Zoom talks about potentially having 100 or 1,000 agents that could go to your meetings on your behalf and make decisions for you. And I'm worried about, what happens when they conflict with each other. So I think, whether it's virtual agents, a lot of it is being trialed internally because people are afraid to let them interact with customers. And I think this is a lot of aspirational. So yes, I think it was on the roadmap. Yes, I now think, I think there was a WebEx thing that said the future is agentic, so now this term agentic, everything's becoming agentic. So I imagine at Ignite will be Copilot and agentic as well.
Well, thanks for that prediction. Early prediction there from Kevin Keeler. Last but not least on the news front, let's talk about Microsoft's quarterly earnings result. Tom, 16% up in revenue, but the market was a little bit skeptical about the all the investment going into AI and the results they're getting. Tell us more. What did you find interesting?
Yeah, numbers continue to be strong. So revenue was 245 billion, up 16% year over year. So this is FY25 Q1, which ended the end of September. Operating income is up. On the team side, which obviously I keep a careful eye on, no massive new announcements. We kind of got a re-announcement of that 3 million Teams premium seats. So that's the premium we talked about earlier that relates to the Queues app and Places. 3 million, up 400% year over year. Percentage obviously sounds super impressive, but it's easy to do big percentages when you're early in a SKU life cycle. I mean, that's 3 million against 320 million users. So it's still early days. 75% of the enterprise customers have either Teams Premium, Teams Phone, or Teams Rooms. So that's a really good sign for Microsoft. Their attach rate for those additional SKUs and capabilities is really strong. And then there were lots of kind of, positive news numbers from Microsoft perspective around the amount of people using Copilot and Copilot Studio and GitHub Copilot. But as you say, the pressure is starting to mount now, not just on Microsoft, but on all the big tech companies around. You've all raced to buy the GPUs and the data centers. Where are the use cases that are going to monetize and over what term? I still think it's a kind of a sound investment on some timeline because Microsoft have the ability to both pump AI into their first party products and be Azure the AI platform for whatever new technologies kind of bubble up and they end up being hosting. So they kind of can win on either side of the fence. But yeah, definitely some pressure brewing over. We've had this AI hype for quite an amount of time now. Where's the revenue coming from and under what timeline?
Yeah, and I was going to say, I mean, it's still early days, right? And so they did announce for the first time, Microsoft disclosed that their total all-in investment in OpenAI is $13 billion, and that was for September 30th, and then they invested another $750 million in an October round. But that's, I think, to your point, Tom, I mean, I'm very optimistic in terms of the longer term. I think that these are early days. These are experimental days. A couple of interesting things I saw, as well on the call is, Microsoft said that for the Azure AI services, demand continues to be higher than available capacity. So they are definitely still building out data centers and investing in GPUs. And then the other interesting comment they made is, I think that there are startups that are just like buying up all the GPUs and then effectively renting that out. And I think it was Satya, made the point that they're not just selling GPU time, they're layering capabilities on top of it. So they feel that they're in a really good place because it's like a value add, right? It's not just like buy and lease out the GPU cycles. I do think that some of the numbers, and of course this is a bit of, it's marketing. I think somebody said the marketing numbers before. But I found that 75%, the stat that you cited, if only 75% of enterprise customers are using premium phone or rooms, like think about it, like if you have, more than 20 rooms, you need a rooms license. So actually I thought that stat was a little on the low side, right? Because they're not saying an enterprise is using it across the board. It's just
No.
you have one of those three, right? So I would have expected to be much higher than that. So if that's the best they can do, I still think that as they come out with more and more licenses you have to buy, I think that, they've got to go market those, right? And not everybody is wanting to buy all these additional licenses.
Super. Well, lots happening on the Microsoft front. It feels like anyway, but let's talk about some industry events, Tom. I mean, we've got quite a few things going on in the next few weeks, all around Teams. What's top of your list?
Yeah, it's a big month for events. So we've got Microsoft Ignite. I'll be over there in person, getting all the news and relaying it. So really looking forward to that. And while we're there, we're doing a Teams fireside chat live from Ignite. We're going to cover all the places announcements and everything we'll be able to actually talk about. So that some of those conversations we had on this session, we'll be getting more detail then. That'll be really fun. That's on the 21st. And then the 27th of November is a massive amount going on. So in London, we have Call and Contact Center Expo. I'll be talking about Microsoft Teams contact center options. And actually, we're going to bring in some of the Dynamics 365 conversation to that as well. We're having our very first Copilot fireside chat. So this is going to be in a similar vein to Teams fireside chat, but focusing on M365 Copilot. So that's going to be all the announcements from Microsoft Ignite around M365 Copilot. So trying to keep the Teams fireside chat more Teams focused and have a specific Copilot one. And also that's the same evening as our London user group. So we'll be at Shore. So if you're in the UK and in and around London, that's our user group where we'll get to go over, again, all the Microsoft Ignite news. And of course, we'll be bringing all the news back to the show for next month as well. So stay tuned because there'll be a lot coming in Ignite and we'll be able to talk about all that next month.
Lots of news, lots to talk about. Make sure you put those in your calendar, everyone. But just before we go, let's talk about Microsoft Teams Ignite. I want to talk predictions. What do we think is going to happen? I know some of you have got inside information, so just do what you can to give us a little bit of insight into what to expect from Microsoft Ignite 2024. Tom, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've covered some of the things that aren't such a surprise. Potentially, obviously, places we've pretty much been told that all the roadmap items appear for November. So I think places will be my number one in our space. But the overriding theme of everything Microsoft is AI. So we'll look for AI and Copilot injected into all the things, no doubt.
How about Ryan? What have you got, Ryan?
Yeah, I don't know that there's much other than Copilot to say, although, yeah, AI infused in certainly every discussion. So I think we'll see this around Teams. We'll see this around the places announcements. Certainly, lots around autonomous agents and the agent story. But I would say just in general, a ton of announcements. I think that's what we can expect, maybe unprecedented number of announcements coming across various products. So there's a lot pent up that's about to roll out.
Josh?
Yeah, I think Microsoft will probably announce a new Copilot that is meant for the explicit purpose of identifying which Copilot you're talking about in all other scenarios.
I mean, that might be the key to adoption, I reckon. That'll be the most used Copilot.
My answer to be a kind of a nothing burger there would be really in line with what Ryan just said. I feel like there's probably nothing earth-shattering to be probably announced, but I could be wrong. Maybe there's a big November surprise other than the American election that I'm sitting watching with all, on the edge of my seat. But yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of add-on to what we've already seen announced. I think we'll see a lot of demos in that space and maybe some enhancements, but it's going to be, in my mind, more AI, more Copilot, and hopefully in ways that help adoption, as has been said, but we shall see.
Great.
So, I think Josh touched on it there. We've seen some announcements already of Copilot stuff, like the Copilot team for rooms. So it can be your digital note taker or be on the front of room display. So hopefully we'll get, GA dates for these features. They've been talked about, they've been sneak previewed. So let's see if we can get some actual GA dates or, early previews of some of these features they've been talking about for a while.
And Kevin?
Yeah, I think I already made the prediction that I think they'll rename the conference the Copilot Agentic Ignite Conference for that'll be for 2025. So there you go. all about Copilot all the time.
Good stuff. Well, we've got a whole host of predictions. It does sound like it's going to be very Microsoft Copilot centric, but we'll see what happens. Lots to talk about. And by the time this airs, it will be congratulations, Josh. You've got a new president, or not, or possibly, but we'll see what happens.
Politics, Rob. Dangerous ground. Dangerous ground.
Would that affect the Microsoft Ignite event? I don't know. We'll see. Great. Well, that's all we've got time for today. So thanks for joining our Microsoft Teams news show. A huge thank you to Tom and our panel for sharing their knowledge and insights. And thanks to all our viewers. We'd love to keep the conversation going. If you want to connect to Tom, myself, and our guest speakers, we're all on LinkedIn. You can find our links down below in the description. So remember to mark your calendars for the upcoming events we mentioned, and stay tuned for more Microsoft Teams news updates. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll be back next month with more. I'm Rob Scott from UC Today. Thanks for watching.